And welcome back to the Dynasty Locker Room podcast, episode 7, where we're diving into the top 10 prospects you need to know for your fantasy baseball draft. And here with me to close it out, I have Tyler and Tessmonster. Tyler, why don't you let us know what you got coming up this week?
Yeah, so I just wrapped up my top 300 Dynasty players for our top 300 that we're going to be doing podcast-wise. So I'm very excited to start recording that with you guys, but I actually am more excited about right now. I just started writing up my article for the top 10 prospects that you might not have heard of that are going to be on your radar next year, and you need to start doing research now. If not, you can even look at a late rounder investment to get ahead of the game, before some of the players in your other leagues. But I'm going to be working on that with Jason. So look at Jason Kreck and myself looking at coming out with that article by probably by March 11th is when we should be releasing that. But very excited to do the top 300 with you two and, get more of a roto mindset.
Definitely. And Tessmonster, what have you done?
Well, I dropped the NL East top prospects last week. Very interesting guy we talked about a lot on the last podcast. Khalil Watson leads the pack. So fun one to write up and very interesting division. Obviously, I've been working behind the scenes on a lot of fantasy hockey stuff, working on the rankings for the fantasy hockey defensemen for Dynasty and Keeper leagues. So it's been keeping me busy along with the usual waiver wire posts. So a lot of good things going on over at the Dynasty Locker Room these days.
Yeah, definitely a lot of fun with both the articles you guys have been publishing. Really excited to see what hockey things, Tessmonster, you have coming here, especially as a lot of leagues are moving forward and looking into the playoffs and being able to build their hockey team. So it'll be definitely useful to be able to dive in a little bit deeper on the hockey side of it. But for us right now, with nothing fun to report on a deal being reached in the MLB, and I don't even want to talk about he who shall not be named, let's jump into these top 10 prospects. And here we're going to have that elite high-level talent that everyone knows about. What's going to be interesting is when you're in that first round, when you're in that top 5 pick, why would you want to take one player over the other? So we'll be able to dive in right now and talk about where our differences are on players that are all going to be elite talents probably, and being able to kind of pick them apart a little bit more. And we want to kick it off right away with our number 10 prospect, and that's going to be Marco Luciano. You guys are both pretty similar on him. Definitely an elite level talent. Tyler, why don't you let everyone know why he made it into the top 10 and what there is to like about him at the end of the first round here?
Yeah, I mean, it's not to get overlooked that, there's a lot of players that are on this top 100 prospect list that are international signees. This is one out of the Dominican Republic that I'm very high on. I'm not a huge Giants fan. Any of you Giants fans out there, I'm not going to lie, one of my bottom 3 teams, but there's a lot of prospects in the organization that I love, and this is by far my favorite one that they have that I love. He profiles as a shortstop, at lean, wiry frame. He's got good strength for actually, as light as he is, which I think he's going to actually start to develop more into his body. It's around 6'2", probably 185 pounds, but I think he's going to sit more around that 200 pounds once he fully grows into his body. He has an open stance, upright body, very clean swing. He's actually, when in 2019, was known for his plate discipline. In 2021, we sort of saw that regress when he got promoted to high A ball. But overall, this is a guy that profiles with great power in that shortstop position, great hitting tool, great defending ability to keep that shortstop position. When it comes to it, I mean, in 2019, we saw him play at rookie ball in low A. We saw him put up, a 302 average, 417 on base percentage, put up 10 home runs in only 47 games. He had 9 stolen bases, but I don't think his speed's actually going to play long term. I think that speed is actually going to slow down when he adds a little bit of weight. I don't think that's a huge factor for him. 5 stolen bases in a year is going to be, where I'm going to cap him off. In 2021, he got bumped from A ball to high A ball. And in A ball, we saw him actually have a very successful season. That on base, the K to walk ratio was very good. But once he got promoted to high A ball, we started to see him regress a little bit. His home runs went down. We only saw 1 home run across 36 games, whereas in 70 games in A ball, In 2021, he put up 18. His average dropped about 50, 60 points. His on-base percentage dropped about 90 points. So I am a little concerned that, once he started facing tougher competition, that we saw those struggles. Now, that being said, his hit tool at this young of an age plays so well. His raw power plays so well. I think this is a guy that is easily going to be a 25 home run kind of shortstop and, a 280 kind of hitter. So I think that you got to be patient with this kind of player. I see him up by 2020, end of 2024, probably beginning of 2025, but very, very sound overall.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at Luciano, he's a prospect that has always possessed that offensive upside that you talk about to belong in the top 100, especially when you talk about that top-end bat speed. But he added nearly 30 pounds of muscle between the end of 2019 and the start of this year. So that's added a ton of more power to his profile than we even saw before. You talked about that robust season he had at A-ball before his promotion, and he really struggled there a lot more than I expected him to. Definitely didn't walk at the same rate we saw previously, and his strikeout numbers climbed. But for me, I guess I'm not concerned when we look at the way he hit over the course of the year, and that's why he remains in the top 10. You talk about a guy at a really young age that has absolutely done everything to earn it, and I'm waiting to see him adapt to that high A hitting pitching before I'm going to write him off out of the top 100 here, or the top 10 certainly. But overall, we see a nice grouping of skills that even if he doesn't have the speed that a lot of these high-end shortstops have, he's got a great hit tool combined with good bat speed, raw power, and a growing understanding of how to use all fields with good pitch recognition. Ultimately, contrary to what Tyler says, I see him moving off of shortstop. He doesn't have a ton of range defensively, and he really didn't post the kind of fielding percentage that's conducive to strong play there long term. What do you think about that, Tyler?
Yeah, I honestly think he has solid hands. We've seen him sort of struggle with, unique balls hit at him just with the hops. But overall, he's got a great reaction to when the ball's hit. So I think his range actually plays. He's got a high IQ from a shortstop position. So I think, he shows the instincts to make plays, and he flashes sometimes. I think that's something with, maturity is going to play a huge factor. I actually do see him. There's a need for San Francisco for a shortstop. And I think with his high IQ, he's going to develop there. He's only 19, 20 years old. I think this is someone that still has a lot to learn, but he has a high IQ. He has good reactions. I don't see him shifting off that position. If anything, he could profile maybe as a third baseman with, if he keeps getting bigger and bigger, as we've seen, like you said, we see him already at 190 plus, 6'2". If he keeps getting bigger, I could see him shifting over at third base, but I still see him profiling as a shortstop.
Even with the defensive struggles, we saw him commit how many errors last year?
We're talking an 18, 19-year-older that, still is developing. I think, San Francisco is ready to be patient with him. It's sort of like we talked about Tyler Soderstrom. It's, you have someone with a great arm, great reactions. You almost have to be a little bit patient. And unlike Soderstrom, who has already proven a great hit tool that can climb up quickly, Luciano struggled a little bit. And I think they're going to be, realize that, they have that need at shortstop more than anything. I think they're going to be patient with him.
I think there's one thing that you touched on a little bit of him last year getting into high A ball, but that's 2019, took 2020 off, and then in 2021, only getting to high A ball, not even getting into double A. Is there any concern that taking a first round pick on somebody who hasn't really made those kind of jumps and isn't going to be a 5-category stud without those stolen bases at shortstop, that he might be a little bit too high on your rankings, Tessmonster?
For me, it's not really a concern. You look at how young he is, and that's definitely a factor. 19 years old, 19-year-old season or whatever in high A ball. I think that's a testament to where he's at developmentally. But I also think that there's something to be said, as we've touched on previously, where you're talking about a guy who could potentially play a premium position at shortstop or even second base. It's still, a desirable position up the middle, where if he's contributing consistently to every other category like we've seen him do in the past, I'm just not as worried about it. And we'll see that with other guys who are further up this list. When you play a premium position, it's just not as big of a necessity to be able to bring all 5 tools to the table. And certainly with Luciano, he does have some growing to do. I don't expect him to be able to miraculously find that speed. I think it's just something where when you play a position like shortstop, second base, if you can contribute in all the other categories, I'm not going to worry about it.
The talent's definitely there, and will play. But for me, I think part of my concern is his fully development, seeing that little hesitation in high A. Hoping he bounces back this year. I mean, there's a lot of growth still happening in his game, but it is something that leads me to think if I'm drafting him, I've seen a little bit of struggles and jumping into, as Tyler mentioned, maybe not making the bigs until 2025. Still has a lot of projection to have, but an immense world of talent here. And kind of going to the other side of the coin on this one, of somebody who exceeded expectations last year and jumped into the top 10, and that's Anthony Volpe. And you guys have him at 9 here. So Tessmonster, what do you like about him, and why is he over Luciano here?
Yeah, I mean, for me, he's a really interesting prospect because when you saw him drafted, he was seen as a premium defender with offensive upside, but he absolutely blew the doors off the building last year with an impressive offensive output that saw him make his debut in the top 100 and crawled into our top 10 overall. Made huge strides at the plate last year. Certainly a credit to the work he put in away from the field in 2020 by bulking up, tweaking his swing, had an independent coach that he worked with. He tweaked his swing to lift the ball more efficiently without sacrificing contact, which is huge. It really showed with 27 home runs, 33 steals, and a 294 average. But as I've talked about, what I love is the walks. 78 walks in 109 games is nothing to sleep on. The strides he made in his age 20 season were incredible. Really solid approach at the plate, offers potential for a plus hit tool, excellent plate coverage, ability to hit the ball to all fields. Despite the numbers he posted last year, I ultimately think he falls more in this range than the top of the list. I see more plus power than game-breaking power, and I see solid run tool rather than a true burner, like we've talked about with Corbin Carroll. So this is kind of what differentiates him from prospects that we're going to talk about a little later. I do look forward to seeing him in Double-A ball this year, continuing to build on what he did in 2021. To me, this looks like a nice hitter that should be in the 290 average range, consistently 20-plus home runs, and provide a nice source of steals as well, maybe somewhere between 15 and 20. I noticed, Tyler, there's a little bit of differentiation between you and I. You've got Luciano actually ranked ahead of Volpe here. So what are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of listeners are going to question, how do you say one guy or a guy with only 1 year of proven track record, how do you rank him so high, and how do you bump him into your top 10? And the answer is we all knew how fast Volpe was. We knew he had good speed. We knew his defensive abilities were very average to above average. We knew he had great plate discipline, but the one thing we did not know, a lot of scouts projected him as that 15 to 18 home run kind of guy. But in that 2020 offseason, there's a lot of video out there actually showing Volpe working on his swings and adjustments that he made, going from more of a line drive hitter to a little bit more of a launch angle. We actually saw how great his bat speed was, how great that plate discipline played into, his adjusted launch angle, and how that home run started to come along. So when it comes to it, this is a guy that early on, might barely break my top 100 if he only puts up 15 home runs, but now he's proven to be more of a home run hitter. He stole 33 bases this last year across 109 games. You touch on his walk rate to K ratio. You're not going to see many minor leaguers be as disciplined at that plate. And I think that's going to be something we're going to see transition in a Double-A when he actually, starts in, April 14th or whenever he's going to start for the Yankees. Now, as far as, why did I rank him behind Luciano? there is the potential and overall abilities. I still think that Luciano projects as more of a power hitter with upside. Now, from a roto standpoint, obviously Volpe has a little bit more speed. So I come from a point standpoint where that obviously as a steal, you only get 1 point per steal. It's sort of irrelevant. So I think I'm sort of mirroring the two and, saying that, from a point standpoint, Luciano's much higher, but from a roto standpoint, it's sort of where why I rank him only one spot behind. So overall, I don't think you can go wrong here. We still are early on. If you think Volpe is going to be up in 2022, 2023, you're very hopeful. The best case scenario for me is you touched on it, 290 hitter, 25 home runs, but we're probably looking at the end of 2023, probably 2024.
I think that's one spot that I'll disagree on is when he gets called up. I think Volpe will definitely be up before 2024. I see what the Yankees are doing as far as all these shortstops on the market right now and not really making that splash that you'd expect the Yankees to make to shore up their shortstop position with a lot of the elite talent out there. And even the rumors of wanting Trevor Story for a 1-year prove-it deal, I think they believe in Volpe so much that they think that in 2023, he's going to be the guy that is manning shortstop for them and going to be able to kind of hone that for the next 10 years moving forward. What are your thoughts on that, Tyler?
Yeah, I mean, I naturally would agree with you if he had played AA ball, but the problem is the Yankees actually have a shortstop right now that's higher in the organization that's played AAA ball. And I think that's what's going to hurt Volpe. And don't get me wrong, I'm higher on Volpe than I am on Oswald Peraza, but Peraza is not anyone to overlook. That's someone that could easily be a plus defender and a pretty decent bat. So, for the Yankees to sell ship on Gleyber Torres at the age of 25, 26, move on Oswald Peraza and jump in on Anthony Volpe in the next 2 years, that's just a very high expectation in my mind. I think they're going to be patient. They have guys in their current positions that can fill those needs until the time being. And I think these Trevor Story talks are going to go out the window. I think the Yankees are going to be willing to keep the money where it is.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see that too. I mean, I echo Tyler's sentiments in the sense that, Peraza's no prospect to sleep on either. I mean, he's in both of our rankings as well. I mean, you saw him hit 18 home runs with a 297 average between 3 levels of ball last year. And I think he's more big league ready than Bulpay is. So it'll be interesting to see exactly what their plan is. I mean, Story is certainly a viable option. I mean, Peraza didn't play much above AA last year. You saw only 8 games at AAA. So for me, it's just a situation worth monitoring, especially if they go the free agent route. I fully expect it to be a 1-year deal. I don't know that either prospect's ready, but certainly Peraza is more imminent, I think.
It'll definitely be interesting to see how that all shakes out with that need at shortstop and kind of being the Yankees expecting to compete. So that'll be, if he does get that call up early, he does start the season off on fire, pick up where he left off. It'll definitely be hard for them to hold him back on a team that's competing. But everything's up in the air, as you mentioned, with a shortstop that has already been there in AAA and also ready to come in and make a difference on the defensive side of the ball with a little bit of offense. So something to look forward to. Here you guys have him at 9 overall, and we'll see how that progresses this year.
Yeah, I mean, you guys sort of touch on, just comparing the two and like the proximity. And I guess sort of to go back to Tessmonster, sort of why you asked why I have him ranked above. I think Luciano just has a little bit quicker path to the big leagues than Volpe does. And I think that proximity is a huge factor to where I rank people. So I guess, I mean, you can't go wrong with either player. They're 1A, 1B to me, but I think from a proximity standpoint, that's probably where, the reason why I have them just one spot ahead.
Do you think any consideration should be given the fact that they played at the same level of ball last year and the fact that Brandon Crawford played at a level last year that saw him get MVP votes, that he may have a path to playing time blocked as well?
I could understand that. I mean, we have 2 years before I'm worried about Luciano breaking camp. So I think he has some development time where it doesn't really concern me. I mean, Brandon Crawford to produce at that level for the next 2 years when he hasn't really done so before, I don't think it's a realistic expectation. And any Giants fan that believes that is buying in a Darren Ruff being a 30-plus home run hitter. And, I'll disagree with you and take any shot bet you want there. But that being said, I mean, there is just a proximity factor. I mean, in 2019, Luciano had a better season in A-ball, low A-ball than Volpe did. And then, sort of the counter happened this year, whereas Volpe had a better year at A-ball, high A-ball than Luciano did. But I guess, when I'm comparing the two, we just talked proximity, overall potential. I have to give it to Luciano, and it's so close. So.
And after looking at two shortstops that are very similar, let's move over to the number 8 prospect over in Detroit, and that's Riley Green. Tyler, you like him a little bit more than Tessmonster? Why don't you let us know about him?
Yeah, this is a prep bat out of Florida for Detroit in the first round, 5th overall pick. We got to see him in 2019 at the age of 18 between, rookie ball, low A, and A ball. He put up a 272 average, decent on base percentage, home runs across 57 games really weren't quite showing, but the speed, also was very mediocre. It was a whatever. But in the 2021 season, after a 2020 off season where he got to work on, his swing a little bit, we got to see him develop heavily. And a lot of scouts projected him, with a high raw power potential, with a high game power potential, plus hit tool with elite bat speed. Overall, from a fielding standpoint, you're just going to get what you get. There's nothing much there. So, from an outfield standpoint, he's got decent speed, but you're not going to get a ton. But they expected his power and his hit tool to start, playing into factor. 2021, Detroit saw what they wanted to in 2020 to say, let's just start him in AA. And he worked his way up to AAA. Between both leagues, 124 games, he put up 24 home runs, 16 stolen bases, 301 batting average, a very good on base percentage. His K to walk ratio was still a little surprising, where he struck out 153 times in 124 games, but he walked 63 times. I think that plate discipline is not something that we're going to see really develop a ton. I think he is going to be a high strikeout candidate, so just keep that into consideration. That being said, he's going to be a huge power hitter in the outfield, good hitting tool where he's going to still put up a good batting average, good on-base percentage where he's going to walk a ton, but he is aggressive at the plate. So overall, you want a very easy candidate that's going to be up even maybe this year, maybe next year, that's going to put up 25-plus home runs and bat, 290-plus. This is your guy. Big fan. If it wasn't for Spencer Torkelson, this would be my number 1 Tigers prospect.
I think for me, the biggest factor here, when you're looking at Riley Green, you see a really polished hitter who brings a lot of the things that we like to see. You talk about a lot of hitters lower in the list, and they're bringing, like I had mentioned earlier, they're doing 4 things exceptionally well. And I think when you compare Riley Green to some of the names we're going to talk about ahead of him on the list, these are all true 5 category guys where, maybe some of them, like we'll talk about in Zac Veen, are just not closer proximity wise, but have higher output potential. I think that's the biggest thing I'm looking at considering here. Riley Green, obviously going to be a good average player, going to be a producer for home runs, RBIs, but he's not going to do the steals. And I think that's what we see outside of premium positions like catcher. I think that's going to be one of the biggest factors.
And now talking about comparing players, we're going to move to another outfielder at number 7 at the Chicago Cubs organization in Brennan Davis. Tessmonster, why is he above Riley Green for you here?
Yeah, I mean, initially when he was picked in the second round of 2018, I thought he was really risky just because of his tool set and how raw he was. Raw! But the Cubs have done wonders to tweak his swing And now we're looking at a guy who posted impressive numbers at 3 levels of ball at age 21. He hit 260 last year, which isn't impressive on the whole, but for a hitter rapidly adapting to higher levels of pitching, I'm going to put some stock in that as well. What really impressed me is a healthy walk rate, 50 free passes in 99 games. A couple areas I'd like to see some improvement in before I truly buy in. 30% strikeout rate is a little bit alarming no matter how many walks you draw. And if you dig into his numbers last year, you see a strong contact rate, but it was only in a narrow band of the strike zone while he swung through a few pitches in other zones of the plate. Despite that, though, I really love his approach at the plate. He works through the middle of the field, letting his strength drive that gap power, and he also prioritizes contact. And we sometimes saw him choke up on the bat for an entire at-bat last year. He's got the ability to take pitches where they are in the zone and drive them. Regardless of some of the concerns, there's definitely all-star level characteristics at play here. He's noted for his strong work ethic since his time as a prospect, amateur ball, and I'm really excited to see him work the gaps in his game this year. A few adjustments and lower swing strike rate, and he has the upside to plant his status in the top 10 for years to come if he's not up sooner than that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you and I are very similar on this one. I mean, it's going to be very common with these next couple of players that there's just not going to be much to add to here. I mean, he was scouted as, a very top defender. So, sitting here saying, his defensive ability is enough to speak on. He's got a great arm, good defender, so nothing there. But as far as his power goes, I was a little nervous before my prospect draft last year. I thought that power was a little overplayed, and then we got to see him in 2021 where he actually, especially in Double-A, he showed how strong, power-wise, how good his bat speed was. That really was a huge factor. His walk ratio is fantastic, and until you compare it to his K-to-walk ratio, I think that's something he's going to have to work on. I think he does strike out a little bit much for someone that I expect to be high on base percentage, high average. So I think that that's something we're going to see him develop over time. But what's nice is if you're looking for a close proximity player, man, the Cubs suck right now. And this is a guy that's I see him being up this year at some point. I don't know. It's hard to project. He could be a July, August kind of guy. But, fortunately for him, the proximity is very close. He's got good power potential. He's got great bat speed for, that hit tool. Defensively, he's sound. The speed's a little lacking of where I'd like him to be, but you're still going to expect to, see 10 stills in the season, which I think is very doable for him.
I think the most interesting facet that we haven't talked about yet about the lockout, and obviously it's terrible, but you look at it and obviously it looks like minor league ball is going to start on time. And for guys who aren't on the 40-man roster, that's huge in the sense that they can start the year at AAA. And if they're rolling, when the MLB season starts, they could potentially start on the major league roster. So that's a facet I guess I hadn't previously considered when we were going through the list because obviously we were hopeful, but that's something I think to take into account too is, starting the season at AAA and whenever major league season kicks off, whether it be April, May, June, whatever it is, we could see some of these guys absolutely just start on the major league roster after getting a little bit of seasoning.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I hadn't really considered either, especially now that we are approaching that lockout territory that might be really extended a month or 2 months, God forbid, into the MLB season. When you're looking at outside of the dynasty aspect too of drafting some of these prospects in a redraft league, could pay some dividends if you're looking for them to be able to get that 120 games in, and that's going to be close to the full season. So that's something to consider when you're looking at these prospects as well. And now let's move it right along to number 6, another outfielder. And we're looking at the Rockies organization here with Zac Veen. I'm really interested to see your take, Tyler, on why you have him ranked so high. But I'm also really interested to see both of you break down why you would pick Veen or Green or Davis over one another when you're in that middle of the first round. So Tyler, why don't you kick us off for us here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of taking prep bats the year after they're drafted, but in 2021, I was super excited. I mean, if you're coming out of high school with, a huge power upside, what better place to go than Colorado? Zac Veen had to have been super excited coming out of Florida. 9th overall pick in that 2020 draft. We got to see him in A-ball in 2021, and over 106 games, he put up a 301 average, a super impressive on-base percentage, right around 400. His K-to-walk ratio was very impressive for someone that's known for putting up huge home run potential. Also, what's incredible is when you actually factor in he had 36 stolen bases in 106 games, but yet he attempted 53 attempts. So he got caught 17 times, but I think once that, intelligence comes on the base pass, his, overall his size sitting at that 6'4", 200 pounds, he actually has elite speed in my mind. So if you're looking at drafting someone that's going to put up 20 to 25 home runs, steal 30 plus bases, and put up a 300 average, this guy was too exciting for me not to sit here and bump. I have a hard time not wanting to put him in my top 5, but overall, I think we need to see another year. We need to see him play at a higher level with tougher pitching to see what that looks like. That being said, also his home runs, it's at 15 this year, but through the first 2 months of the season, we saw him struggle. He was only batting under 200, and that power wasn't flashing. So I'm excited to see what a full season when he actually starts to mature and really develop what that looks like, because I think we could be seeing a 25 home run, 35 stolen base kind of guy.
Yeah, and that adaptability is exactly what we've been talking about with some of these guys on the list, where if you can, over the course of a season, a couple months, adapt to what you're seeing and be able to put the ball in play better, I think that speaks immense volumes for your mental game and your makeup as a hitter, for being able to make adjustments and identify what pitchers are doing against you to try and negate that and, improve your output. This might be the one guy I've debated with you two the most about over the last year and a half. While there's no denying his talent, I've had my own questions about his proximity to the majors, how quickly he would be able to adapt. And that's kind of what moved him down my board last year. And I might be kicking myself in the long run, but we'll see how that shakes out. Obviously, big power potential here. Based on current power ability and the projectability of his frame, he's undoubtedly a big selling point here for his power potential long-term, especially playing in Coors Field. I was especially surprised with how strong his hit tool, his plate discipline, and like Tyler mentioned, that speed. Not really aspects of his game I expected to play out in year one. Definitely be interested to see how that hit tool plays out long-term. I think that's truly going to be the deciding factor on his upside. In 2020 Instructs, he struggled against college arms that were able to keep his power at bay by pitching him inside. And some scouts have questioned his dead hands and his swing as well. Being able to tool with his swing will be imperative for him continuing to hit, especially as he gets to the higher levels, but also reaching his full power potential, being able to turn on pitches inside more effectively. At Coors Field, I think this is a player that I like even better for his power output in that park. It takes him from like a 25 to 30 home run potential bat to somebody who could regularly hit 35 home runs out of the park if he plays up to his potential. What I'm going to be looking for is that contact, like I mentioned. It's what really separates the top tier talent at this point, and something I'll be looking for to see if he's, more of a Joey Gallo type or something that can be more.
It's crazy, Tessmonster, when you actually talk about it. There was questions from scouts on his hit tool and his speed. And within 1 year, he said, if those are my weak points, and he sat there and worked on them in that 2020 season, Nation, I guess, do you see any weak points in this hitter that has been doing it all in, his first year?
For me, I wanted just to point out to Tessmonster, I saw that he kind of ignored the fact that he was one of my draft picks coming up, and you had to pass on him to take Corbin Carroll.
You both took him.
So I needed to throw that out there again. We get into the top 10 where some of my picks land here, but he's somebody that I was super excited about. The only question mark I had for him really coming out was the playing in Colorado was great, but how Colorado has handed prospects in the past, it seemed like it might be a little bit longer of a path to get to the big leagues for him. I don't know if you guys feel the same way. Tessmonster, what do you think about playing for that organization and how they actually handle prospects?
Yeah, I mean, pitching prospects specifically, they've been notoriously bad for, but you look at the number of, quote unquote, top tier prospects that have come up over the years that have just failed to pan out. You look at like a Garrett Hampson or players like that, and, they just haven't produced to the level that they were expected to. Jury's still out on Brendan Rodgers. So I do have some questions about that. I also wonder, if they're not going to be competitive, and it certainly doesn't look like they're going to be in the near future, I don't know if they're as inclined to move him rapidly through the system. Obviously, we saw with as well as he played last year, they didn't even let him get a cup of coffee at the next level. So that's going to be something I'm going to be monitoring going forward.
I'll tell you this, with these negotiations going on, if the players get their way with this manipulation with these prospects, this will be a player that will stand out. If Colorado wants to dick them around in the minors, they're going to look very foolish, because I think that bat's going to play at AA and AAA, and they're going to have no reason to keep him down. So I hope the players get his way and this manipulation rule goes out the window, because this would help this prospect big time with a Rockies organization that has been terrible.
Yeah, notorious, especially when you think about Tessmonster. You mentioned Brendan Rodgers, and it seemed like he was ready for almost a year and a half and had a spot to play and just never made that jump to get up to play next to Trevor Story there at second base. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how this progresses. But another one of these prospects here in the middle of the first round that I absolutely love and really looking forward to seeing how he progresses this year and seeing if he can duplicate those home run and stolen base numbers at the next level. And now let's move away from these outfielders and go back to my favorite organization for prospects in Seattle with Noelvi Marte. He's number 5 on your list, Tessmonster. What do you like?
Yeah, there seems to be a common theme we seem to keep touching on throughout the top 100. The Mariners are absolutely loaded with minor league talent. Marte is another international signee that sets the Mariners over the top in this category. No denying his triple threat ability with the bat, the power, the speed. Though he hit for only a .273 average last year, he had 17 home runs and 24 steals in A-ball, and he boasted a really nice walk rate at 11% too, against competition that was more than 2 years older than him. I'd like to see that strikeout rate drop a little bit, but with the hit, power, and plate discipline parts of his game coming together nicely, it seems like it's only the natural next step in his development. The bigger question mark to me comes in the form of where he ends up at the diamond at the moment. Due to his size, projection, and defensive struggles, with 30 errors in 107 games, I think he's a lock to ultimately have to move to the Keystone or hot corner. But overall, we're talking about a supremely talented player that should hit at the top of a strong Mariners lineup for a long time. Would look very nice in that 2-hole, I think, based on his blend of talents with the ability to get on base, or the ability to take an extra base. So these are some of the things that I'm looking for, especially when we're talking about that top tier of prospects. We're seeing true 5-tool guys that can help you in every category. And that's what I really like about Noelvi.
Yeah, I mean, we like I said before, we get to this top 10. It's hard to disagree on much of what you're saying. I guess the one big talking point, I sort of heard you talking him off that shortstop position because of his errors and his defensive ability. But I'm going to disagree with you there. I think the Mariners understand that his hit tool, his speed, which he's got elite speed, he's got good power, great hit tool. Overall, hitting defensively, they know they're going to have to work him up quickly. I think they're going to force him at that shortstop position. We haven't seen them actually in the 2 years he's played with the Mariners organization actually shift off that position. And I think they're being patient with him, knowing that that's something that's a key focal point, and they can, stop focusing on his hitting so much. So I think you still have to project him as a shortstop until something changes, but that is a big concern in my mind. I mean, 2019, he made 30 errors across, 63 games, which is a stupid rate, a poor fielding percentage. And then in 99 games, he played at a higher level, but he still made 30 errors, 924 fielding percentage. So it went up. So there was some progress there. I think we have to see that, progress heavily. But I think the Mariners organization, when, you look at a 19, 20-year-old prospect, I think this is one guy that they have to be patient with. I see him up by end of 2024, maybe 2025, but God, his hitting abilities, his speed, he's unreal.
Tyler, I know we're both really on the same page here. Can you tell everybody listening why somebody like Noelvi ranks higher for both of us than some of the other shortstops we've already mentioned, like a Volpe or a Luciano?
I mean, you're talking 19 years old. He's stealing 24 bags, getting caught 7 times. He's got 11% walk rate that you touched on. He's got 17 home runs at a position. Okay, let's just say he shifts off that shortstop position. He goes to second base. That's even more valuable. So he's doing it all at a very young age. And overall, I mean, you can't you can't turn down the value of someone that hits all 5 categories: on base, steals, home runs, runs scored. I mean, it's just so elite with him. And now, as an Angels fan, it kills me to say that their prospect pool for the Mariners is so top tier, but it is. So you're talking about a guy that's going to play on a top team. That makes him even more valuable. So it's just this guy has everything going for him. The only thing he needs to work on is his defensive abilities, but I still see him as the shortstop going into the bigs.
Nathan, your thoughts on a player with a package like that?
I'm all about a big full package for a player, but I'm glad that Tyler, you touched on that. 'Cause it seemed like when you were talking about moving him off of shortstop as a negative thing, but if he goes over to second base, that might make him even more valuable with how deep the shortstop position is, being able to slot that 5 category person in at second base, really elevating that position. If he gets called up as a second baseman and starts producing, he might be one of the top 2 shortstop or top 2 second basemen in your draft. So thinking about positions and where he's going to play, that might even make this number 5 prospect even more valuable in the coming years.
Before you end it on him, I will say, I think he's going to have the Wander Franco-esque vibes to him when he gets called up. Everybody is watching. Everybody is excited. I think he has that kind of abilities. He's just younger. And I think, we're maybe a year behind the Wander Franco-esque vibes to it. So look to him in, 2 years to have that same feeling when he gets called up.
That's a hot take.
That is a take that we'll be looking forward to coming in the next few years. But now let's move away from those premium positions of shortstop and your outfielders and moving to one of the corner infielders here at Spencer Torkelson at number 4. Tyler, you have him at number 4. Tessmonster, you have him at number 4. You both seem right on the money with his bat. And let us know kind of why he's here and why you take him over some of these really exciting 5-tool players that we just talked about.
Yeah, I mean, this is someone out of Arizona State. As a freshman, was putting up 25 home runs across 55 games, batting .320. His walk to K ratio was damn near 1-to-1. And then he repeated that sophomore year, 57 games, 23 home runs, .351 average, high on base percentage. Once again, the K to walk ratio was, amazing. Everyone was super excited. And his last year that we knew was going to be at, Arizona State, we were super excited to see what would happen. Unfortunately for us, shortened season, we only got to see 17 games. He put up 6 home runs, .340 average, but his walk to K ratio went from 1-to-1 to 31 walks to 15 Ks. It was very clear college pitchers gave up on pitching to him. It was fun to watch because it was one of those Barry Bond moments where you knew he was just better than most of the pitchers out there. So that transition to him, going into that draft, being that first overall pick, it was a no-doubter. And, if you had a prospect pick that year, it was clearly your number 1 pick too. Early on, in spring training, we saw him struggle a little bit. High A ball, we sort of finally saw him turn that around. 31 games, he put up 5 home runs, batted .312. Again, K to walk ratio, amazing. One thing you're going to clearly hear me talk about all the way up until AAA. His plate discipline is elite. He walks a lot, he strikes out very little, and he gets a lot of home runs. There's no stolen base factor for him. He's slow. That's not going to be a consideration for him, but he's going to put up huge RBIs, huge home runs, huge on-base percentage, huge batting average. He is a very complete package coming out of college, and I think the Tigers are going to be very stupid if he's not called up this year. You know, they project him as a first, third baseman, outfielder. It's tough to say, you know, where he's going to end up, but I really do see him probably projecting more as a first baseman. I don't think he has the third baseman defensive abilities to stay there. So, you know, long term, see him to stay at first base, be a 30 home run plus hitter, you know, 290 plus average and a high on base percentage. Very good, you know, top 5 player here.
Yeah, there's a lot to like in a nice package. And for me, I think the top 4 is really where we see a tier break here in the top 10, because these are truly game-breaking bats that also have a proximity to the majors to be able to do so this year. Was the top college bat in the last decade, without a doubt. And he wasted very little time showing exactly why he was the top pick in 2020 by rising from high A to AAA ball in his first post-COVID campaign. Though some would point to the struggles that he had at the plate as he moved through the system last year as a red flag, he hit 267 on the season with 30 home runs and that impressive walk rate that you talked about. He doesn't have much value, if any, defensively, and the hopes of him staying at the hot corner seem to be a pipe dream at this point. But this was never really a selling point on his, you know, ability to produce for a fantasy standpoint. His bat carries his profile entirely, and that alone has elite potential. And from that standpoint, I kind of see like a Miguel Cabrera-esque type of hitter where you're just getting that elite bat, elite walk rate, power upside. There's a lot to like. That raw power, with really sound barrel control, compact swing. He's going to become a complete hitter if he can shore up some of his contact problems at the bottom of the zone. But he also has that excellent plate discipline that we both talked about. Good walk rate, and you know, he's got good plate recognition to lay off pitches outside of the zone entirely. It's going to be really fun to me to see where he plays to start the year. I previously thought he could start the year up with the Tigers, but you know, like we talked about, if the minor leagues start before the major league season, he gets a month in April in AAA, and he could absolutely start the year with the Tigers based on the lockout scenario. So there's a ton to love here. Great bat long term, could absolutely win Rookie of the Year.
I think you made a really good point here that we got into the top 4, and it does seem like a page break when a lot of the players that we were talking about previously in the top 10 here still had some projection to them and a little bit more of uncertainty. Once you get into the top 4 here, starting with Torkelson, it seems like a lock. It seems like somebody who has an elite bat, and you know what you're getting out of them, and you're really excited to have somebody like this on your roster for the next. And now we get into the top 3, rounding out what seems like an infinite number of catchers, but everyone's number 1 catching prospect in Adley Rauchman. You both have him at number 3. You both agree on all of your top 4 players here. But Tessmonster, why are we drafting a catcher at the top of the first round here?
We all saw what Adley did to our hometown Gophers in the NCAA postseason a couple of years ago, and it still makes me a little bit mad, even though our hometown boy Max Meyer did strike him out. But obviously the consensus top pick in the 2019 draft, top catching prospect on the board, not only because of his strong defensive abilities behind the dish, but also a complementary hit and power combination from both sides of the plate as a switch hitter. Truly a complete prospect, put it all together last year, 285 average, impressive 79 walks to 90 strikeouts in 123 games between AA and AAA. 50 extra base hits was really nice too. Really good plate discipline is what sets him apart, especially in points leagues that Tyler likes, but also leagues that factor in OBP. Only a 6.7% swinging strike rate last year. He would have been a top 20 hitter at the major league level with that. From my standpoint, this is the safest player on the board. Overall batting prowess gives him the highest floor because of the premium position he plays at catcher, and his ceiling is the top fantasy catcher in baseball for several years, and a top 15 hitter overall, not to mention. Ultimately, as we've seen with all catchers, how many games will he play annually? That's going to be really what decides what his output is at the most demanding position in the game. Rauchman is the top overall catcher in the game for the next decade because of all the talents he possesses in a complete package. And he's going to start the year in AAA again, obviously with the lockout, but we're going to see him this year, and he's right in the running with Torque for American League Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, there's not much I can disagree with you here. Now, I do want to preface that I talked about Henry Davis potentially down the road competing with Adley Rauchman, and I want it to be on the record that, I think Henry Davis has the potential to do exactly what Rauchman did in the 2021 season, where he batted .285, put up 23 home runs across 123 games. The one thing I think Henry Davis could have down the road over Rauchman is the speed. Now, that being said, Rutschman's proved it at a higher level that he can compete with. You touched on that K to walk ratio. Man, if every hitter had that K to walk ratio, it'd be an easy decision that their plate discipline at a young age is elite, their hit tool's elite, their power's elite. It'd be easy to move forward. So that's where Rutschman grades above Henry Davis for me. That plate discipline, the overall hit tool, the power potential, you sort of touched on it. It's such a safe pick, and the Orioles will be doing him a disservice if they don't have him up for over half the season. I could easily see an easy Rookie of the Year candidate here. So I agree with Tessmonster on damn near everything.
And I think talking about him at catcher and being able to bring those tools to the plate is going to give you that leg up compared to a lot of the teams and your counterparts that might be streaming some catchers when you get down outside of kind of those top 5, top 7 catchers. Being able to be one of those, lock him in for the next 5, 10, 15 years would be a huge upside compared to what kind of your league mates are in as a catcher. So having him here at 3 is no surprise. Definitely looking forward to seeing what he produces at the major league level this year. And now we move up to our number 2 prospect. Personally, my number 1 prospect, surprising nobody, we're going back to the Mariners organization with their outfielder, Julio Rodriguez. Tyler, why don't you kick it off? Let everyone know why you have it at number 2, but you really should be having him at number 1.
Between number 1 and number 2, I don't think there's going to be much arguments. You could flip-flop them. It is what it is. But that being said, at a young age, we're talking that, I hate that we're talking about the Mariners again, but they drafted this guy out of the DR, another international signee from Dominican Republic, that at a young age we saw below rookie ball. He put up 5 home runs, batted .315. His K to walk ratio was amazing. 2019, we finally got to see him play at the high A level, crossed 84 games, put up 12 home runs once again. K to walk ratio was very good. It went down a little bit, but not a surprise there. He faced tougher pitching. It was a shame that we missed him in the 2020 season, because this was someone that, by 20 years old, he could have debuted if he didn't have a down year. In the 2021 season, between AA and high A ball, 74 games, he put up 13 home runs, batted .347, K to walk ratio. Once again, his plate discipline showed. I just, when you look at someone's plate approach and you watch video of him, I don't think there's anybody more sound in all of the top 100 that we'll touch on. I think the one thing that he lacks that actually kept him out of that number 1 overall pick was actually flashing that power that we know he has. It just hasn't showed yet. So to, rank him above our number 1 prospect, I think that's the only thing that kept him away from it. Now, from a defensive standpoint, I think he is an average fielder. I don't think he's going to win any Gold Gloves. He's got a strong arm, but outside of that, he doesn't have a good natural instinct, lack of speed. He's athletic, but I just don't see him being a top defender, but there's no reason that will keep him from getting called up. I could even see him being a late call-up this year, but in my personal opinion, I think this is a 2023 midseason call-up.
In terms of fantasy baseball, this is a true impact player. The biggest differentiation for me between him and my top prospect is the position they play on the diamond and whether that speed plays up for him long-term if he continues to fill out that frame. Arguably, Julio Rodriguez is the most complete player on the top 100 list. Perfect blend of hit tool, power, speed, plate discipline. He's got a career minor league average of 331, 98 walks in 217 games, and that surprising speed that we've said on a couple episodes of the podcast now, 21 steals in 74 games, that has eclipsed his home run totals of last year. When we look at how many games he played last year, he only played 74 games. But you remember, he played for the Dominican in the Olympic Games, and he was just as impressive against elite Nippon pitchers, that's the Japanese league, and Korean pitchers, as well as against the minor league pitchers that he did face in the minors this year. He's an incredibly safe prospect just based on what he brings to the table already. And as far as the ceiling, I mean, the sky is the ceiling for this guy. Though I've moved all my shares to go title hunting, maybe regretfully, he's an incredibly talented player that should be the cornerstone of a very strong Mariners team for years to come. As I mentioned, I question the speed long-term, but overall the power and hit tool are there to provide for a 300 average and 30-plus home runs annually in his prime. He's going to be an MVP candidate down the road, and that's what differentiates him from a lot of other names. We're not talking all-star caliber. We're talking perennial MVP candidate.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned him playing in the Olympics. I think that's one of the things, again, how well he performed on that bigger stage of the Olympics, helping the Dominican get their first ever medal in a bronze and coming up with a lot of clutch hits against that older competition and really being able to show that the big stage is nothing new for him, that he can handle it. Again, one of those players that when we touched on enjoying baseball, I think of him. Big personality, has that ability to perform on the field, but even off the field, being kind of the face of baseball in 5 to 10 years with everything that he brings to the table. Even something as simple as while the Mariners were in the wild card hunt last year, coming to the baseball games and watching them play, just a guy who loves baseball. And again, sky's the limit. Really excited to, even last year when people knocked on him for not being able to steal bases, kind of comes in on a short stint on those 74 games. He goes, I do have that in my repertoire here. Let me steal 20 plus bags and be that impact on a 5 category player. So really excited for him, again, that Mariners organization, and being able to watch that blossom. And now we can go ahead and wrap up our 100 prospects that we've got. In the number 1 category, you both have him here, Bobby Witt Jr. Tessmonster, I know you love him. Again, number 1 on your prospect rankings. Tell everyone why he should be the number 1 pick in any draft going forward here.
Without a doubt, this has been the most talked about prospect since Wander Franco, even more so than Julio. The 2nd overall pick in 2019 is my top overall pick because of his pedigree and true 5-tool talent and a premium position in shortstop. He made a huge splash in spring training last year, hitting some tape measure shots, and showed that it was just a warm-up for a near 30-30 campaign with a 290 average and a 936 OPS. His ascent has been truly remarkable. In 2019, he played against rookie ball pitchers, had 2020 off, and came back in 2021 and destroyed 2 levels of minor league pitching. He defensively has the skill set to play short long-term, even if he's not a supreme defensive talent. Even with guys like Adalberto Mondesi, Nicky Lopez on the roster now, it's possible all 3 of these guys see a mix of positions on their resume by the end of the year, but I like Witt to emerge first of all the top 10 prospects on the list. I do have a little bit of concern over his swing and miss rate, 131 strikeouts in 123 games, but that's nothing new in today's game. He doesn't have as high of a ceiling with that hit tool as some of the other names on the list, and has struggled a little bit with sliders away, but he does have the hit tool to hit velocity exceptionally well, and his biggest tool is the ability to turn on some of those fastballs up and in, like we've mentioned, have been holes in other guys' swings. When we're talking about top prospects, Witt provides exactly what I'm looking for, an incredibly high floor with a ceiling as the top shortstop in all of baseball, and a guy who can post those 30-30 lines regularly in his prime.
Yeah, I mean, talking about Julio and Bobby Witt, I think, we're very similar on sort of what they project as. I think the one thing, you talked about Julio being maybe one of the most well-rounded players. I think Bobby Witt, in my opinion, is the most well-rounded player. I think Julio, has great instincts on the base pass, and I think he, has long strides that help him get those stolen bases. But once he adds, some weight and, ages, I think that's going to regress. He lacks that quickness and burst. However, Bobby Witt, his speed, I think, is going to play long-term. He stole damn near 30 bases between AA and AAA. And in AAA, he stole 15 bags and only got caught 3 times. I think that speed is something, we're going to see play long-term. And from that shortstop position, when he has the power potential that he has, I think that is an easy reason why I threw him as my number 1 candidate. Now, you did touch on his plate discipline. I think that is probably the biggest knocking point. I think his K rate is something that is going to, play into the big leagues. That's going to be probably his kryptonite. He does walk a good portion. He has a good plate approach, but he is very aggressive. And I think those strikeouts are going to be something that we're not going to see regress over time. I think, if you're looking at him being a very high on base percentage, I think we're going to see in his first 2 to 3 years, the big leagues, that regress heavily, where he's going to be a 340 to 350 OBP kind of guy, but still a 275 hitter, easily a 30-30 candidate in my mind. And that is why he is my number 1 candidate. He touches on all 5 categories in roto, and even in points, he knocks it out of the park.
There's one more thing I want to touch on before we wrap up our top 100 list. And we touched on kind of these top 4 guys being kind of major league ready to be called up. What are your thoughts, Tessmonster, in kind of these top 4 guys? And if you're in a dynasty startup draft, where kind of overall in rounds are you going to be looking to maybe put some of these guys on your roster?
I know when you and I did our way too early top 25 back in October, November, that I put Julio Rodriguez firmly in my top 25, and he's still there now. I mean, guys like him, guys like Bobby Witt, they're knocking right on the door where it would be silly to skip over them in lieu of some of the other positions on the diamond that are a little bit older. So I'm taking these guys over a Mookie Betts in my book. I'm taking these guys over some of your more seasoned starting pitchers that are starting to age. This is the kind of conversation that I'm looking to have in this range, especially when we get through, into the back of the second round, depending on how big your league is. Definitely in the third round. These are definitely the types of talents that I'm looking to identify early on and make sure that they're on my roster for the next 10 years. With guys a little bit lower on the list, maybe I'm going to wait a little bit, especially since some of them need a little bit more seasoning. I'm not taking Zac Veen in my second or third round, but, I'm certainly looking to identify him maybe in the mid rounds of my draft ahead of some of your other, like a Max Kepler for Minnesota, or, guys who, can provide value in certain roto categories, but, are not as sound long-term for all 5 categories. So it depends on which prospect you're looking at, but I'm definitely looking to identify them and draft them over some of their older and different position counterparts.
And that'll definitely be something that will have a big impact when we get to roll out our top 300 list coming up here shortly. So it'll be a fun thing to add on to this closing of our top 100 prospects podcast here. So look forward to how these top 100 prospects translate into where you should be drafting them and valuing them in that top 300 list moving forward. And that wraps up our top 100 prospect series. And now let's go ahead and close her out. Tessmonster, what do you got coming up this week?
Yeah, be on the lookout for the NL Central top prospects that just dropped. Be interesting to break down some of those names and take a look at what we can expect for them coming up. Guys like Henry Davis, Brennan Davis, Hedbert Perez. So be sure to head over to the Dynasty Locker Room and check out some of those names. Coming up, we've got the top 300 players, so be sure to stay tuned for that. We'll have Tyler back to start digesting some of those and get them in tune with some of our roto standpoints and get him into the correct state of mind moving forward. Be on the lookout for some future podcasts. Get together with Jason again, break down some roster construction and off-season talk, and obviously check out the much hyped at this point hockey podcast coming up. It seems like we've been talking about it, and it's just something that's been in the queue. So a lot of fun things going on at the Dynasty Locker Room.
Yeah, it'll be definitely exciting and beneficial for Tyler to come start playing the right way to play fantasy baseball. And it'll be really fun to jump in and talk with him about that top 300 players in the next couple of weeks here. So be on the lookout for that for sure. And always come visit our forum, come ask us questions. If you want to dive into some of the prospects, think we should have had some of these in a different order, come state your case at the forum. Let us know what you think and what we missed. And we'll be happy to go back and forth with you and pick each other's minds. That's what this is all about, to be able to get some information out there. So as always, I'm Nation. You can find me at Nation DLR on Twitter and Reddit. Tessmonster, where can I find you?
DLR Tessmonster on Reddit, on Twitter. All my stuff's right here at the Dynasty Locker Room. Come check it out. A lot of fun things going on here, like I mentioned. So it's a fun time to start being an active member of the community. Hit up that baseball league. We're excited to get that going and start building the community and start playing baseball the Dynasty Locker Room way. So come check us out, like, subscribe, and let us know what we can do to bring some more knowledge for you. What are you looking into? Just, we're always looking for active participants in our community.
Absolutely. So thanks for joining us. Until next time.